A consensus emerged to assure against unauthorized use, the never concept of nuclear weapons. A presidential directive was issued in June 1962, calling for PALs to be installed on all nuclear weapons dispersed to NATO commands, for both non-U.S. and U.S. forces.
Overall, there was an urgency to equip the NATO stockpile with something that interrupted critical electrical functionality inside the weapon and prevented the normal use of the nuclear device.
We had PALs in weapons in Europe, coded switches installed starting in September of that year.
NATO was involved in the installation of these weapons and the generation of the code management system. This was really their show. PAL was only an enabling hardware.
The first generation PAL devices were motorized versions of the Sergeant Greenleaf lock that we used to find on all of our safes.
It was literally a combination lock attached to a system of motors and gears that would allow you to remotely manipulate the lock mechanism as opposed to twisting it with your fingers.
MC-1541 represented the technology that we had at the time, which was electromechanical. It was a clockwork. You would put in a code, and that would then shift around to see does that number correspond to a stored position of a code wheel. And then you would move to the next digit and do the next code wheel. And finally, when you get down to the fourth digit, and you've got all four code wheels lined up, it would allow a gate to come down, which would press on another switch, which would then allow electrical current to flow to the weapon.
Now the PAL device is integrated into the system. It's embedded and buried within the weapon system. And so an adversary would have to find his way down into the weapon system to be able to circumvent or bypass the PAL device.
The PAL, of course, is the device to permit administrative control by means of codes.
That code could be held separate from the weapon, indeed could be held by the U.S. command authority and shared with the NATO ally only at the very last moment.
So you separated the holders of weapons, the people that did the daily care and feeding, from those that authorized it.
But the people who had to operate those systems initially took it kind of personally.
As a besmirching of their loyalty and their responsibility.
You don't trust us. It was a reflection on the faith, so to speak, or trust we had in them. And the other, which was really, I found amusing, was what if we don't get the message? What if we don't get the codes?
There were a number of operational issues that had to be addressed because this is a system that required external interaction with weapons support personnel.
By the fall of 1962, the first permissive action links were installed on U.S. nuclear weapons in NATO, including those dispersed to U.S. forces on quick reaction alert. Both the Army and the Air Force immediately challenged PAL's reliability.
There were problems in terms of the instructions as well as the hardware for charging batteries and storing batteries and those kind of things. I was sent to Europe to understand the specific nature and scope of the problems that the military was having. Not with the hardware that was in the weapons, the permissive action links, but the rest of the system that allowed that to work. We did not make proponents immediately out of the services, but we certainly did diffuse a level of anger and resentment.
In a democracy like the United States, civilian control of the military means civilians must also control the use of nuclear weapons. What the PAL did is separated possession of the weapon from ability to make a nuclear detonation. You could possess the weapon and yet not be able to detonate it, at least not until you had received the PAL code.